All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Michelle, and I'm, the woman behind Polyamorous While Asian.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Kat, and I am a full spectrum doula and an organizer. And I'm just, I'm here and I'm excited to talk to you. This is like I'm fangirling, honestly, because I've been following you for a while, and there's a lot of great insights that you give to us, and I just always I'm just amazed. So right now I'm a little like
It's okay. It's okay. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you, coming on here and like talking for the first non-monog dialogue of the year. It's been a couple
Yay.
months since I've done this because I was just kind of like giving myself a break. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm so excited, and let's dive in. And first of all,
Yes.
go ahead and describe, like, I guess your polyam origin story, like how you came across it and how
Mm.
that started.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it wasn't until I was like 19, 20 years old when I really started to hear like the word polyamorous and like non-monogamy. At the time I was in a monogamous relationship, first queer relationship. So, there was a lot of different things that I was learning. I was really coming into my sexuality and just like my overall just wholeness. And the internet is a wonderful thing. Google is great. And so I just started to, like just check out what other people's experiences were in terms of like non-monogamy, and of course like the different types. And polyamory is just kind of the one that kind of stuck with me, and I was like, this seems like it fits like what I'm looking for. And so after that relationship ended, it was kind of when I decided, like, okay, I'm going to start, claiming this, and I'm going to name it for myself. And, if anyone's ever interested in a romantic dynamic with me, I'm going to like let the person know, like, this is where I'm at, and this is what I'm exploring. And, if you want to join, come on down. But, if not, that's cool too.
So how would you describe like your current relationship, I guess, like structure or style, or maybe even just in
Yeah.
general, like your relationship philosophy at this point?
Yeah. So I am currently married, and I've been with my spouse for about 6 years now, and we've been married for a whole year. I try to practice in a way that just feels good in the moment. And that mostly just involves a lot of check ins, a lot of, checking in with myself, checking in with my current partner or partners. I'm the type of person that really I admire people who can take on multiple partners, but my personal limit is maybe like two or three total, just because I try to be really intentional about the time that I give my partners. But right now it's just my spouse and I would say it's kind of hierarchical, but not really. Like I feel like when we think of that, there's a lot of rules. There's like vetoing and all of that stuff when I think of like hierarchical polyamory, but that's not necessarily how I choose to practice it.
Hmm.
I just know that, in terms of hierarchy, like my spouse is my priority. So I will be giving more time and energy to him versus like a secondary or a third partner. But of course, this is something that I try to be as transparent as possible if anybody's like interested in dating.
Nice, nice. Yeah. And I know that like I know there's a lot of, I guess, wariness around like more
Mm-hmm.
hierarchical poly, or, when there is like a primary or nesting partner and stuff. But like,
Mm-hmm.
I know I like to always reiterate that like it's not inherently like unethical. It's like
Mm-hmm.
unethical if, like the couple or something, or the person in the couple is trying to hide it and isn't
Right.
upfront about it, isn't
Mm-hmm.
transparent about it, for sure. I know like a big part of like this conversation is the fact that like you're polyamorous and your spouse is monogamous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're gonna touch on that in a bit, because yeah, people had like a lot of questions. But yeah, first of
Yeah.
all, I think like a big reason I do these like non-monog dialogues is to just like, like amplify voices and faces that like, aren't really seen in mainstream
Mm-hmm.
non-monogamy. So how do you feel that like being Chicanx has like affected your polyamorous experience?
Yeah, well, just being like a first generation Mexican American coming from like, immigrant parents, there just wasn't any exposure to any other way of loving other than like this very intense, toxic monogamy. So for me, as a queer person as well, that was the other side of it, was like all I saw was like a cis couple, like a
Mhm.
cis type of love, heterosexual type of love. And for me, it never really, I used to think like as a young kid, I was like, there's just no way I'm ever gonna find like love. I'm never gonna find like a partner because I'm just so like I'm not it. Like I'm not what I'm being taught I'm supposed to be. So I think venturing out to college and going to a new city and meeting a bunch of different people really just allowed me to see like the possibilities of what, you know, what my life could potentially be and look like. Even now, I'm not someone asked me like if I was how do I come out to like my family, and I was like, well, I haven't, like I don't advertise it to my family, not to say that they don't have access to know, like they definitely like, you know, are social media friends, and it's not like I don't keep it a secret, like I do talk about it from time to time. So but no one has really said anything, and that's probably a good thing because I feel like they'd be like, what's going on here? But you know, I'm very open to talking to them about it, but it's just not something that I grew up with or that they're used to or they don't really understand. So that can be a little I wouldn't say isolating, but it can be difficult to navigate for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I have a similar thing with my family where it's like I feel like we're kind of in like a don't ask, don't tell kind of
Right.
situation with regard to like, you know, personal life and stuff where
Mm-hmm.
I think they realize that like they would be uncomfortable with any answer that I may give them. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know that like my mom does follow me on Instagram and I've like blocked her from seeing my stories so she doesn't get anything spicy. But like but like I've never like formally come out to her as like bisexual or
Yeah.
anything. But I in one of
Mm.
my shirts on like a picture I have like my Gaysian shirt. So she's like so she's got to know that I'm not straight, but she's never going to ask me about it.
Right. And that's fine, you know, like I invite curiosity, but I'm not gonna go look for it. Like I'm not gonna like, you know, be like, ask me questions. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like you'll be over there and I'll be over here and I'll be ready to talk when you're ready to listen, you know.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. Like whenever, because people have that question a lot where it's like, oh, do I come out or how do I come out? And like first and foremost, I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, I like the way that you said it. And like first and foremost, like I think that, you know, coming out is like a very personal thing and it's like it's something that should serve yourself. You know, it's not something that is for other people. It's really for you.
Hmm.
So if you don't want to come out to people and like if you think that they're gonna react poorly or whatever, if you think that you know, you
Yeah.
can react like aggressively or violently, like don't come out to them. They don't
Yeah.
deserve that part of you. Like really.
Yep. Yep. It's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Say
But
it.
and it's complicated and it's tricky because it's family and there's always so many
Hmm.
complex emotions there. But yeah, I mean
Hmm.
that's basically where I'm at, where it's like if people react negatively to that, like they don't deserve to know that part of you.
Yep. That's good. I like that.
All right, so the monogamous polyamorous dynamic. A lot of people have a lot of questions. A lot of people are like, does this even work? This seems
Yeah.
fantasy. Like there are some
Hmm.
people who are like, it just automatically sounds unfair. But yeah, to start
Mm-hmm.
off, if you want to like describe, I guess, like how it works with your spouse and
Hmm.
how you two came to that.
Yeah. So my spouse and I, we worked together prior to ever dating. So he was aware of me and all of me. And especially when we started to date, you know, I made sure to have a conversation, an intentional conversation with him, letting him know like this is how I view dating, relationships, love, intimacy. Like this is how I choose to practice. And you know, he was just kind of like, well, that's interesting. Like I can definitely see where you're coming from, but and he let me know like I'm a monogamous person and this is how I choose to date. And I told him like, you know, if you feel like this is something that you're willing to work on, like if you're willing to be open to my experiences and how I choose to practice love, and I will be open to yours. And we just kind of went from there and just really trying to have intentional conversation about the times where it does feel kind of like, wait a second, is this okay? Like, because that whole unfair thing, right? Like, if I start dating someone, he's not dating anybody. It's like that has come up where he's like, well, is that really fair? And I'm like, well, okay, let's talk about what that even means, first of all, because you had informed consent. Like you knew exactly what you were getting into, and this is part of it. And so honestly, it's just a lot of talking. We talk so much. There's a lot of talking, a lot of intentional, like making time to talk. And that's basically what we do, like anytime I'm interested in somebody or someone expresses interest in me, I let him know. And then we go through like, okay, what are you comfortable knowing and what are you not comfortable knowing? Because we always have to talk about those boundaries. And some boundaries kind of just like we both just know this is something that I have to practice and he has to practice every single relationship, right? And there are other boundaries that are more particular to that relationship. But yeah, honestly, it's just a lot of talking.
Yeah. No. I mean, I feel like, of course, there are ways of doing like non-monogamy without like all the talking, but like,
Hmm.
I think any like of the longest term kind of non-monogamous relationships that I know of, it's like we talk and we talk and we talk and we do the inner work and then we come back and we talk.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, and so, and it's interesting that concept of fairness because I think a lot of the times we still think of it through that kind of monogamous mindset where like fair means like absolutely equal, where it's like if I'm dating one person,
Hmm.
like the other person has to be dating one person, or else it's
Hmm.
not equal, it's not fair. But
Right.
so have they ever been interested in non-monogamy or do they like know that they're just monogamous?
I think there are times where, he definitely will express that he has a crush on somebody and I try to like plant the seed and I'm just like, oh yeah. I'm
Of
like,
course,
well,
of
if
course.
you come to this side, I think over the years he's become more open to the idea to like potentially explore that for himself. And if and when he's ever ready, like I've always like, told him like, go for it, like I'm happy. I want you to spread your love, you know what I mean, like I want that for you. But right now he's just kind of like, no, like I think I'm good for now. But it's nice, like he lets me know that he appreciates that, appreciates me being open to that.
I know some people were talking about like, oh, what's the difference between this and like I think some people had concerns about because there are some unhealthy dynamics out there where it's like one person is polyamorous and the other person's monogamous. And like,
Hmm.
if the monogamous person were to ever become polyamorous, like there would be a problem. Yeah. So like, definitely sounds like you and your spouse are like definitely not that. And it's a lot more open and a lot more like, yeah, you do you and you be happy and we'll communicate all through the
Right.
hmm
Yeah, that's just always the priority, is like just checking in and making sure we're just aware of what's happening. And
Yeah.
I'm good. Other than that, like, do your thing.
Yeah, and I love like check-ins. Check-ins are so important, but like what do check-ins look like for you? Like do you have them regularly? Do you only have them when like something comes up or yeah, how what do
Mm.
those look like in general?
Yeah. So lately, we've been trying to do check ins like once a month. And this is kind of something that I wanted to do. I brought it up maybe in like November ish of last year. And I was like, I think it would be really helpful because what we were doing before was checking in when there was something that felt a little bit charged for one person. But then I was like, I think it would be a really good idea to just check in general about our relationship and how we're doing, if, our needs or our wants are changing. And so we've been doing that. We set like typically on Sundays, depends, once a month, and we just sit down and we talk. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I like because I think some people get confused of like, okay, when we do check-ins, like is it weird to have scheduled check-ins? Is it weird to like schedule talks
Mm-hmm.
with your partner? And I'm like, I think it's something that isn't taught very often, but like I'm
Mm-hmm.
always like all for it. Like if that feels good
Mm-hmm.
for you and your partner, your partners, yeah, schedule them so that you know that like, okay, maybe I have a concern, but at least I know I'll be able to like have this space where we both check in and we have this container that we build together. We can
Yes.
like process and maybe have concerns and stuff. So I'm like, yes, scheduling, it's not it's not being too anal or anything. It's like it's very reasonable.
Right. And it's not like we have that check-in every single month. Like sometimes we're like, no, like the check-in is like, hey, how are you feeling? You good? Great. And that's it.
Mhm.
It's not every single one is going to like turn into an hour-long conversation, but the point is that we're trying to be intentional about creating that space for each other, and that's, you know, that matters to both of us, and so we're both willing to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so awesome. Okay, so like a couple of different questions. A theme was like, how do you balance, especially like in your case, like you live with your spouse and stuff, and so
Mhm.
there is that sort of hierarchy there. Like, how do you
Right.
balance, like maintaining that stability within that relationship, and like balancing stability and stuff with other relationships. I think people have concerns that like, oh, because the monogamous person doesn't have other partners, like they're just always getting the shorter end of the stick. Like no matter what,
Mm,
they're just getting less love or less blah 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 blah.
mhm.
How do you think, like, how do you navigate that balance?
For me personally, I'm a huge fan of just checking in, y'all. Like,
Got a
if
theme here. When in
I,
doubt, just check in.
yes, just, and my partner's just been really good at practicing this when he's feeling like, okay, like I'm feeling like you're giving a lot of time and energy to this other person or these other people, and I'm wanting that, you know, intentional time with you. And of course, just because someone is asking for something doesn't always necessarily mean that he's going to get it, right? Like, but the point for me is like, now I'm aware of it now. Like, I'm aware that this is a feeling that you're feeling, and I'm going to be more conscious about how much time and energy I'm giving other people and in what ways. So, for instance, like, he's a big fan of like watching movies with me, and he's always like, this is a no phone area, right? Meaning you're not texting anybody else. Like, that's something that he would want, he has asked for, you know? And I'm like, okay, like your quality time means like just you and me, and you know my phone's going to go over there for a bit. But yeah, I mean that's basically how we handle those situations whenever he's feeling that he's not getting as much as he would like. You know, I've told him like there's no way for me to know that, like I can't read your mind, and so as soon as you're feeling it, however you feel comfortable communicating it, whether it's like a verbal direct communication, texting me, or writing a little sticky note just saying like, hey, I miss you, like let's hang out, you know, that works.
Oh, that's so cute. Like little sticky notes.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
cute.
And I mean, I think in all dynamics, but like I think
Hmm.
especially in like a monogamous polyamorous dynamic, it's so important to be able to like advocate for yourself, and also to
Hmm.
have that environment to advocate for yourself. Because right, some people get into relationships and like, when someone tries to stand up for themselves or try to make a request, the other person just always shuts them down. But like
Yeah.
but yeah, when you have an environment where like you can advocate, where you can like make a request, and
Hmm.
and I have this feeling that like with a request like that, it's more of a request rather than like a demand, right? Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's like a huge difference, like the boundaries versus rules thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
you always respect the other person's autonomy, like they can say yes or no, and then
Hmm.
you negotiate from there. Also, I think from that kind of monogamous or maybe compulsory monogamous mindset where the whole like unfairness thing comes in, is that like there's so much focus on the romantic relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's one relationship where one person chooses not to have other romantic or sexual partners, the other person chooses to. But then I feel like that always discounts all the other relationships that we're in our lives, family, friends, coworkers, anything else, where it's like,
Hmm. Hmm.
is that person completely isolated? I mean, is
Hmm.
so do you find, or have you found that you've had to like worry more about maybe reassuring your monogamous partner? Like, do you feel like that was like an obstacle, or like how has that gone?
I definitely have felt like it's an obstacle for sure. And like reassurance, just for him in general as a person, is really important. He loves like words of affirmations. And in the beginnings of something new is when he needs it the most. And, you know, he's just gotten to a point where he's able to communicate that with me now that we've been together for almost 6 years. But like in the beginning, I think it was a lot harder for him to say like, okay, because his, you know, in that mindset that where he was coming from was like, why do you need this other person? Am I not giving you what you need, type of thing? And I'm just like, listen, buddy, like let's talk about relationships in general. Every single person has their unique gifts and skills, and every single person brings something different to our life regardless of the dynamic. It's that's not to say like that I'm not satisfied with our relationship, but you're not going to be able to fulfill every single need, and I don't, and vice versa. Like, I'm not going to be able to fulfill every single need. You're not getting it necessarily from like other romantic relationships, right? But you're getting it from other means, like other ways. And I think once I was able to kind of like help him understand that, at least where I was coming from, it was better for him to be able, like, it gave him more of a space to be like, okay, I hear you. And this is just like, I just need you to let me know that, you know, that you still love me. And I'm just like, yes, of course. And now it's just, I think now it's more of reassurance of, I'm going to make time for you. Not necessarily, do you not love me or you're not getting your needs met, but, or it's for now, he's just like, you're just making all of these connections. And not just romantic connections, just in general. He's like, you just, you're spending a lot of time in other people's stuff. And I'm like, yeah, of course. So now it's more of a like, I promise that, our love and our relationship is a priority. And so if you're ever needing anything from me, like just talk to me.
Yeah, that's great. And like I have, had like more casual relationships with
Hmm.
monogamous people who like know that I'm polyamorous, but like, they're like, oh, we're just here to have fun and we're here to chill. And, we'll be like that more kind of like friends with benefits kind of thing. And it's like, it's chill. But I feel like if I were to get into a relationship with like a monogamous person, I know I would have this like anxiety about like, oh, but what if they really are just like, what if they don't feel comfortable telling me, or like
Mm-hmm.
what if they're actually not okay with it? How do I make sure that I create some sort of space or environment in which they can like actually be honest with that? Have you ever experienced that where like you had this insecurity about like, oh, is my partner actually okay with this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I mean, it's hard not to think that way, especially when, we're married and we live together, and there's a lot of time and investment that I put into our relationship, and vice versa. So does he. So like, yeah, it does. There are definitely moments where I'll share something, or I'm dating somebody and I'm just like, is should I be checking in more? Have I really provided a space for him to like share his true feelings? But I just kind of have to let that voice, that inner critic voice thing go, and just be like, you know what? I have directly communicated as much as I need to.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, if he's feeling something, he has to figure it out, and he has to create that space for himself and then approach me and we can figure it out together. So, yeah, it definitely comes up, but I don't let it deter me from continuing those connections.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, I think there's so much gray area, or there can feel like a gray area between like, okay, what kind of actions or feelings are my responsibility, and what kind of actions or feelings
Mm-hmm.
are like their responsibility? Because it's like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, I don't want to be an asshole. I don't want to just
Right.
be like, oh, I'm just gonna do my own thing. You can take it or leave
Yeah.
it. But right, there's at that same time where you said like you have directly communicated, you've stated and have been transparent. And I think also part of this is like honoring the other person as like
Mm-hmm.
an autonomous person who can make their own decisions.
Yes. Oof.
Like, and right, and doing that in and of itself isn't being an asshole. It's
Yeah.
being a respectful, yeah, just like seeing a person as your equal. You two have been together for like 6 years, so like you've had time to
Yes.
read each other and figure
Mm-hmm.
out each other's cues and stuff. So but yeah, so I would say for anyone like starting out, it takes time. Obviously, it takes time.
Yes. Yes, takes lots of time and practice for sure. And that, I mean, you just have to start doing it from the get-go, honestly, and build that routine or that habit of just checking in and communicating often.
So how would you like, and I think
Hmm.
we've touched on this before, and like and asking for reassurance and stuff, but like, the feelings of jealousy, when jealousy comes up, how do you two navigate that?
Jealousy. You know, I think a lot of times people just are like, jealousy is a no, like in any relationship, but mostly like as a polyamorous person, like it just seems like one of those emotions that people are just like, we shouldn't be experiencing that. Why are you experiencing that if you're all about like loving and like open to all that? And it's just like, no, like jealousy for me is my body speaking to me. My body's trying to tell me that I'm uncomfortable with something, or I'm feeling like something is making me feel charged and maybe even potentially triggered. And so for me, by seeing me do this, I've noticed that he also does the same. Whenever we're feeling that feeling, it's like I have to take a moment to like really name it,
Mm.
to be like, okay, this is what this feeling is. And then I have to think about the root. And I'm like, what's happening? Because all I'm seeing is the leaf, right? Like I'm not seeing like underneath. And once I've named all of that for myself, then I come back into the shared space and I'm like, okay, this is what was going on. And he'll do the same, where he'll be like, I was feeling this type of way, and that's why I was feel like I was silent, or I was, I wasn't as responsive to you, or I was snappy or whatever, like, and I apologize for doing that, but this is where it's coming from. And yeah, and we just go from there. And typically whenever we have those conversations, I'm a big words of affirmation person too. Like I love words of affirmation
Yeah.
and physical touch, just so people know. But I'll let him know, like at the end of these like pretty heavy conversations, I'm like, I just want you to reassure me like that it is okay to feel the full spectrum of emotions. And I do the same for him. And I'm like, I think it's so great that you shared that with me. I love that you were vulnerable with me, and it's all good. Like, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to grow in this way, because now we're both aware of our roots, right? Like now we're both aware of that, and we can move in a more mindful and loving way from this point forward.
I mean, that's so important because like jealousy is always like this surface level kind of alert, right? Where it's like,
Yes.
oh God, bad feelings coming up. But it's
Mm-hmm.
it's right. It's never, I mean, sometimes I think it's probably pretty clear, but like there's always, yeah, there's always something underneath it. I like that like metaphor with like the leaves and the roots and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's right. Like you see this like green leaf and you're like, ugh.
Yeah, you're like, oh God.
Together and it's like, oh, like, oh, there go my, my abandonment issues or
Mm-hmm.
rejection
Mm-hmm.
fears and stuff like that. And like, oh God, I'm so afraid you're just gonna leave me, even though like, yeah,
Yeah.
like with my longest term partners, I've known them for like 5, 6 years. Sometimes that like little alert still comes up where it's like, oh God,
Yeah.
when are you gonna leave me?
Right, right. And like instead of avoiding those alerts, we like honor them and we name them, and we work with the person to like reassure ourselves and to like make sure that we continue that cycle of like holding space for each other, really, you know? So,
Yeah, no, and that's right. And I think that's just like the most beautiful thing, being able to hold space with someone
mhm.
else. Like, oh, that's some good shit.
Yes, that's why I love to love. Come on.
Mhm. So I think oftentimes we talk about like red flags, like, oh, what are red
Mhm.
flags that you had to look for? And I think those are important to talk about,
Mhm.
so other people can learn and stuff like that. But also, what do you feel like were some green flags, like especially when you were starting out in your relationship and starting out
Mhm.
with this like being polyamorous with a monogamous partner, like
Mhm.
what kind of things helped make you think like this is gonna work? Like this is the kind of person
Yeah.
to do this with.
Honestly, just him always wanting to understand. Like his curiosity was a huge green flag for me, because he was coming from a place of like, this is what I know and this is how I choose to love. And now there's something completely new that I've never done before. Like he'd never been in a relationship with a polyamorous person. I've never been in a relationship with a monogamous person. Like, at that point in my life
Mhm.
before, yes, when I was monogamous. But yeah, I think that was the biggest one that I was like, I think it's going to work, because he loves to understand my reasons. He wants to know, he's curious. He's not making, there are definitely times he's a human, right? Where he does make assumptions, but we have those beautiful check-ins, and I'm like, is this an assumption that's being made, or like are you reaching out in curiosity? So yeah, I think that's the biggest one. And him just being really open to me being attracted to other people. Like he's never really had jealousy in that way. Like
Hmm.
it's just like, yeah, like, oh yeah, I agree, that person is cute, and just like encouraging that has always been for me like a good like indicator that this is something that was going to work. But yeah, I think those are the two big ones that stand out for me.
Yeah, those are big. Those are big. Like definitely like the curiosity piece and just
Mhm.
like being open to being like, I don't know what this is about, but I'm open to understanding. Yeah, God, that's so huge. And I'm like, I feel like I would encourage that for most relationships, like
Yes.
having that openness, having that curiosity and having that like
Yeah.
ability to be, flexible to some degree. Great. And yeah, I love the I love the whole like being able to, kind of crush on the same people and just being like,
Yeah.
God, check them out. Like, oh, that's amazing. And the other person being like, I agree.
Yeah, it's fun.
I think in some cases, but in like the monopoly like
Mhm.
dynamic, some people try the don't ask, don't tell tactic,
Mhm.
where it's like
Mhm.
that relationship, the polyamorous person just doesn't share maybe anything at all, or maybe I there's a spectrum for sure. Like I know some people are like,
Yeah.
pretend, like we kind of pretend it doesn't happen, or maybe the polyamorous person just says bare logistics and that's it, no details
Mhm.
or anything like that. From what it sounds like, I mean, you guys like communicate a lot. Like how much information does your partner want, or how much information do they get?
They get a lot of the logistics. I mean, I think that's the biggest one that I always try to make sure I communicate about, just so that there isn't any confusion about like who's spending time with who or what's going on. And then in regards to like all the other stuff, that's really just about like his boundaries and what he wants to know. So I make sure to let him know if I'm, in terms of sexual health, that's a big one. I'm
Mm.
like, listen, this is where I'm at. This is where this person and I are at. And I'm going to make sure to ask this, this, and this, and I will report back to you. Like just kind of let you be aware of what's going on. But like he doesn't want to know like all the
Right, all
details, right? I mean,
details,
unless he does, that's fine. Like I'm cool with that. No, I'm just kidding. They have to have consent from the other person. But anyways,
yeah.
but yeah, it's mostly just very like I would say surface level for the most part. But there are times where I'm experiencing joy and I choose to share that. And of course, I check in and I'm like, I've experienced something and it made me really happy. And would you be interested in hearing it? Because I want to share that with him. And there are times where he's like, yeah, I'm open. And there are times where he's like, no, I don't want to hear that. And I'm like, okay, thank you for letting me know. Or, I'll let him know. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't really go into a bunch of detail. It's mostly just things that I feel are going to affect him. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what might communicate.
That makes sense. Totally. And so
Mhm.
when you are feeling like a lot of joy and, your partner isn't, isn't in the space to like, hear that, how do you channel that then? Because like, I know
Mm.
sometimes where it's like, oh, I want to tell someone something, but they don't want to hear it or whatever. It can feel almost like rejection, or it can feel kind of
Yeah.
like kind of deflating that balloon a little bit. Like, so how
Hmm.
do you channel that? How do you still hold on to that joy?
I love to journal. I will go in on my journal. I'm like, I am so happy. And this is great, and I love to dance. And just friends, other people who want to like hear about my joy. I'll tell them.
That's definitely a good tact. I think a big question, and like we've
Hmm.
touched on it, you've touched on it. How do you make it long term? Like, what do you think are some like main things, like in addition to like checking in? Because yeah, I think checking in is a big one. What
Hmm.
do you think are some main, I think, ingredients to help make this like a long term, sustainable kind of dynamic?
Ooh. I'm just like, I mean, you tell me. I mean, as far as I know, what has worked for us, everyone's going to be different, right? But for us, it's just about talking. Like, we just communicate so much, we check in so much, and just like being open to each other's evolving needs and wants and desires, and just like always having that at the forefront of our minds, while keeping our autonomy, right? Like, him and I were two different people, but also understanding that we're a unit. And in order for that unit to grow, like, we both have to bring in certain things from our own lives, and like our own gifts and our own like communication skills and everything like that. But yeah, I feel like that's honestly what I would think is going to help us continue on this path of marriage and being in a relationship together. It's just really just talking. And another thing I would say is just really making intentional time to just love on each other. I feel like that's a good recipe for any relationship, is really just having the thing that y'all both love to do, and just like keeping that, even if it's just for 10 minutes a day, just to continuously do that. That helps a lot.
Yeah, no, that's important. Like, definitely with regard to like non-monogamy or monogamy, like we all really should just be more toward like intentional, very conscious relationships and relate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people forget that, and I think it's easy to forget that, especially because we have like so many other things that we have to worry about, and like,
Right.
oh God, we have to work and do all these other obligations at the same time. I have to like keep working at this relationship, and I'm like, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think that is very important. I think it can be dangerous. I think when we try to put relationships on autopilot in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think we
Mm-hmm.
can do that sometimes, but like for that to be like your main MO for the relationship,
Yeah.
not good. Yeah, like
Yeah.
putting in the work. I love that you mentioned that. I love that you mentioned that, like, finding, like actively finding the things that you like to do together and like actively carving out that time, like even if it's 10
Mm-hmm.
minutes, like
Mm-hmm.
that's so important because I think a lot of people expect things to just like, oh, let the chips fall where they may and no control over that. And it would be like
Yeah.
unsexy or unromantic if we were to like plan it and like carve out that
Mm-hmm.
time. It's all just got to be
Mm-hmm.
natural and organic.
I'm like, no, I think it is sexy when you're intentionally trying to love me and spend time with me and honor my needs. Like, that's hot.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's like a common joke with like polyamorous people, but like Google Calendar is life. And
Yes.
I like putting those kind of things in Google Calendar, and it's very helpful.
Yeah.
And like if I look at my phone and I see that reminder, like it gives me warm, fuzzy feelings. So I'm like, that's something to look forward to. Yeah.
Yes, it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so I mean I think we covered like most pretty much the themes and the topics that people were interested in. Like, do you have anything else you'd like to share about, like, because I know there's a lot of skepticism and there's some
Mm-hmm.
stigma, and yeah, that whole topic of unfairness and stuff. Like, do you feel like you have any other like tidbits or anything you'd like to share about your dynamic?
Yes, I think when people are so accustomed to thinking a certain way, so let's get real, we all live in binaries, right? A lot of times, even as polyamorous people, we live in binaries. I think like, oh, it's only going to work out if we're with a polyamorous person. Like, I really encourage people to be curious about where these judgments come from. Like, what is it, what's telling you that this it's not going to work? Something's telling you that it's not going to work. Like, is it because you don't feel like you have the skills to communicate? Is it because you feel like, you yourself are not going to have enough time to reassure and nurture that relationship? Like, what's happening that's making people think like, oh, okay, well, you're polyamorous, this person's monogamous, that's not fair, that's not okay, or that's never going to work. Like,
Mm.
something's going on there. And I mean, trust me, like, I've been there. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be with this guy. It's supposed to be like a one night stand, and it's and it's like, just kidding, we're married now. But I really did have to sit down and be curious with myself and ask myself those questions, like, well, what makes me think that me being who I am and being polyamorous means that I can't love this monogamous person? Like, what am I scared of?
Mm.
um and those fears, they had to come out, and I had to name them and have space for them, and I had to communicate them with him, to be like, this is why I don't think this is going to work. And he had also the space and the container to say, I agree. And then for us to be like, okay, well, we love each other and we want this to work, so how do we intentionally move forward? How do we keep doing this? And that's just, there are many things that we're experiencing, especially since we've been married for a year. Me having a relationship while being married was a whole new thing. You just have to have a lot of patience
Mm.
and a lot of time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like polyamory, honestly, it's a beautiful way to really get to know yourself and all of you. And I think by extension, it's allowed him to do the same. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think we've covered a lot. We've covered a lot. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I want to thank you for coming on here. Thank you for your time and for your like just like your presence and your wisdom. And like I
Thank
know a
you.
lot of people will appreciate it because it is like a very mysterious topic in non-monogamy.
Yes. Yes, I'm very open to creating more space to talk about it because sometimes it's a little frustrating when people are like, well, that's never going to work, or like have come up with their judgments, and I'm like, hey, I hear you, they're valid, those are valid judgments, trust me, it's a challenge. But like, let's talk about it. So I appreciate you making the space for us to have the conversation, and hopefully somebody can take something away from it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel pretty certain that people will definitely find value in this. Yeah, so you want to like where can people find you? What kind of projects do you like working on? Like what? Yeah, let's just plug.
Me. Yeah, you can just find me on Instagram at princesa_gata. That's just like cat in Spanish. Because people always like, what does that mean? And right now I'm like I said, I'm a full spectrum doula. So I'm doing a lot of birth work stuff. I'm an organizer for a national collective called Veggie Mijas. And y'all should check them out too, doing a lot of cool stuff in terms of like food access and environmental justice. I like to rest, I like to read, so if y'all have any recommendations for books, I'm always down, let me know. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and thank you everyone for watching. Hope you all have a good one.